Good evening, everyone. Welcome to our weekly Torah learning of inspiring and spreading light to the whole world. We always like to start off with giving because how we give, that's how Hashem will give to us. So please give generously so Hashem can give you generously. Tonight's class, we're going to dedicate it to the merit of the complete refuah shalema for a special shlucha who comes onto this class weekly. And is so grateful to us praying for her, Dvorah Leah Bas Yafa Liba. We're also gonna dedicate this class to Sarah Bas Ruchama Bluma Rivka, that all should be good for her. Razel Bas Adas, my old neighbor who needs a complete refuah shalema. And I do this class in honor of Rivkadina Bas Yosef Yehuda. I hope you're proud. It's also the year of Hakel, and in the times of the Beis HaMikdash, the men, women, and children used to gather. And today we're doing that. Really globally around the world, we're gathering and we're learning, and please, whatever you learn, share it with your friends and your loved ones. Tonight, I'm so honored to introduce you a guest speaker from all the way from South Africa. And if you're wondering how I heard about her, my dear friend Faggy Brofman told me that she heard about her. She heard her speak and was blown away, and I must get her since last Sukkot. And we were in touch back and forth, and it's all about timing, and here she is. So tonight I want to introduce to you Batsheva Phillips, originally from Cape Town, South Africa, now Johannesburg, South Africa. She's going to share with us her journey to Judaism. So if you don't mind, to please unmute yourself, and we are so blessed to have you tonight.
So I am unmuted. Can you hear me, Chaya? Okay, amazing. I think it's an honor for me to be here. So thank you so much for having me. It's incredible, especially since, like you say, I'm sitting here in Johannesburg and we're able to share over Pesach with women that are probably watching, I'm sure, in more places than just America. So thank you. Thank you so much for having me. And as you touched on timing, I thought it would be important for me to say, you reached out probably around November, December last year, and I'll tell you, I converted about 4 or 5 days before Rosh Hashanah last year, and it was the craziest time because we were obviously gearing up for the Beis Din, then we went before the Beis Din, and about 4 days later we went to mikveh. And after mikveh, we had to have our entire kitchen kashered, and we kept what we could, and we had to get rid of what we couldn't, which wasn't considered kosher. And then everything had to be toiveled, and then I had to remarry my husband, because as soon as we came out of the mikveh, we weren't halachically considered married. So that time was crazy. So we got married on the Thursday. It was Friday, Saturday, Shabbos, Sunday, Rosh Hashanah. So it was a very manic time. And obviously, we went into the high holy days at that point, and someone from my shul asked me if I would speak for First Day Sukkot for a women's breakfast, which is exactly what I did. And after speaking there, it kind of triggered a whole bunch of other shuls hearing my story, and they said, "Can you come and speak first? Can you speak first?" So every week I was speaking at a new shul, which was incredible. But by the 5th talk that I gave, I think I broke, like I totally broke. And I realized that I was actually dealing with PTSD at that time because I was unraveling parts of my childhood trauma that I'd never brought to the surface before. And it just felt like my world was crashing down. So yeah, December was a very difficult time for me. And now, since we've been in touch again, kind of February, March, it feels like the exact right and perfect timing to be speaking to you and to your group of ladies, because it's right in line with the Jewish calendar as we're in Pesach now. And it's almost like I've been going through my own personal exodus, and I'm on my way to, freedom from personal slavery and trauma. And please God, sharing with you ladies tonight will be an additional step towards my healing. So with that being said, let's begin. If any of you do know South Africa or Cape Town, I grew up in Constantia, which is a beautiful little suburb there. And I lived predominantly with my mom and stepdad and my younger brother. We moved around a lot. I was actually counting as I was preparing this talk, and I lived in 13 different homes by the age of 16. So yeah, including an international move. We actually lived in New Zealand in between all of that too. Growing up, I was exposed to two totally opposite worlds where my mom was a frum Christian, if you want to call it that, or an observant Christian, which meant Sundays we spent in church, Wednesdays we hosted a Bible study group, and on Friday nights I would go to the youth club. Before I say what I'm going to say next, I think it's so important that I say what I'm saying is based on my experience and my view and my opinion, and I don't want to offend or hurt anybody else's feelings if they've got different views or opinions. So it really is not my intention to offend anybody with this, but to me, growing up in a Christian home was kind of Christmas trees and hokra buns and Easter eggs paired with the side of judgment and restrictions and hypocrisy. And the reason I say hypocrisy is because every Tom, Dick, and Harry was a Christian. And it was kind of like the default religion where you would ask somebody, oh, what religion are you? And they'd say Christian. And it's like, do you read the Bible? No. Do you go to church? No, but you're Christian. And for me, it didn't feel like there was wholeness associated with Christianity, and there was no form of connection. So that's probably why I didn't resonate with Christianity. On the other side of the spectrum was my biological father, and he was the total opposite of my mother, however Christian as well, but he was kind of all about sex, drugs, and rock and roll. And when he wasn't getting arrested or spending time in rehab, which was once, twice, 3, 4, probably more than 5 times, he was obviously, my brother and I went through such incredible disappointment because he was coming in and out of our lives whenever he so chose. So there was no consistency there. The first time that I was on the receiving end of his physical abuse was at the age of 10. And this abuse lasted for around 11 years, actually exactly 11 years. The day after my 21st birthday was the last time that I was assaulted by him. I learned to cover up many swollen and black eyes, split lips. I can't even count how many bruises I had. I defended every girlfriend that he would punch, every neighbor that he got into a fight with, and every waiter that he would scream at. And at the age of 10, I learned how to physically fight back. I fought a man that was 3 times my size in order to protect my loved ones. So at the age of 16, I decided that I'd had enough, and I had fallen into this deep depression, and I was unable to kind of keep up this facade where on the one side I was living this false life in this, white picket fence, perfect little world. We dressed perfectly, we spoke differently, lived in this gorgeous neighborhood. But on the other side, I was smoking cigarettes by the age of 14 that my father was buying me. And it was just too much contradiction. So in my naive and damaged head, I decided that I was going to figure out the world for myself. And at 16, I decided it was also time for me to be a mother, as one does. I wanted to teach my parents how to parent. I think that was the psychology behind it at that point. So it was decided it was time to have a baby, which was obviously, as you can imagine, the most immature and irresponsible decision that I've ever made, but of course, the most rewarding and wonderful decision too. At this point, I should insert a disclaimer to say, do not try this at home, and do not follow in my footsteps, because as much as my decision was ultimately a part of Hashem's plan, it was not a journey that I would recommend to anyone. So fast forwarding to grade 11, I was 16, turning 17, and I fell pregnant with my then long-term boyfriend, long-term, whatever you want to call it. And my mom and stepdad obviously found out, and I was given an ultimatum to either terminate the pregnancy or move out of home. So I decided to leave, obviously. My mom packed up my clothing into black bags, clothing and toiletries, and she drove me to Main Road Sea Point, where I was dropped off on the side of the road without money or a phone or any idea really of what I was going to do next. So I walked. And I walked and I walked until I came to this grungy looking building, which my biological father was actually staying in at the time. And in the 2 days that I lasted there, I witnessed multiple drug deals going down, prostitution. I even lied to the police at one point when they came knocking on the door looking for him while he was in a back room hiding in the cupboard. 2 days later, I rode a train back to Somerset West and stayed with a friend so that I could finish my final year exams. December holidays arrived. So we have our school holidays, like summer break in December for 6 weeks. So December holidays arrived soon after that, and I was able to get a full-time job at a clothing company, retail company that I'd been working at part-time over weekends. And I saved up a bit of money, and I was able to rent a little cottage, studio cottage, was more like a room with a bathroom on the back of somebody's property. Yeah, so that's, yeah, on the back of somebody's property. In the background, though, my mom was still working on a fourth termination, and it actually went so far to the point that I required a legal representative. So there I was, just before my 17th birthday, pregnant, working 6 days a week and looking for a pro bono lawyer. Thank God I found one. My mother and I ended up going through mediation with the legal team, and the results were that because of my age, my body was my body and nobody could force me to terminate the pregnancy. And you can imagine it was a very difficult time, and no one kind of knew how to deal with, as a mother, I'm sure, how do you deal with, you know, a teen, your daughter being pregnant, and as me being a stubborn teenager, I didn't know how to deal with the situation either. But I do, words that I will never forget, what she did when she realized that there was nothing more she could say or do or try and convince me otherwise. She looked at me and she said, well, now all I can do is continue to pray that you'll have a miscarriage. And she turned away. After a couple of weeks, I'm sure emotions settled slightly because I was given the opportunity to move back home to my mom and stepdad on condition that I gave the baby up for adoption. And obviously there was 0% chance that I was going to go through with an adoption, but on the little salary that I was earning, I couldn't afford to pay school fees as well as rent. So I pretended to make the deal with her, and I moved back to my mom's house to carry on with my matric, which is grade 12. I don't know how your schooling works, but that's final year of high school. Saying that that was a rough year is a complete understatement. I mean, no one spoke to me in the house. No one looked in my direction. I wasn't allowed to leave the house. I wasn't invited to family get-togethers. And I was basically a stranger living in their home that had committed one of the worst deadly sins imaginable. Anyways, I gave birth a couple of days before my preliminary exams, and a few days later I was back at school to write. And thank God I was able to write each and every one of my final exams with a 6-week-old baby while expressing and pumping and dumping milk in the school bathroom. And somehow managed to scrape together a couple of distinctions and a university pass. But obviously the minute I finished my last exam, the plans were in motion to get out of there, to go back working full time so that I could move out of home and support myself. But that obviously came with its own challenges. I was just turned 18, playing house with a baby and the father of my daughter. I don't know if you've heard the saying, but they say you marry your father, or you marry your mother, or at least somebody with the same quality traits as your parents. And that's kind of exactly what I did. So after a year of going through physical and emotional abuse with my daughter's father, I decided that I had to get out. There was no ways that I was going to let my daughter be exposed to what I was exposed to as a child. So I filed for a restraining order and I fled Cape Town. And that's how I ended up in Johannesburg. So we arrived in Johannesburg at the end of 2010, a baby, a suitcase, and a teenager with a dream. And luckily I had a job and somewhere to stay, and it was totally temporary, but it was a start. This was a really hard time in my life, a very lonely time. But once my daughter and I were settled a little bit more, I reached out to Joburg family that I had, and the cousin that I reached out to had actually gone through a Jewish conversion, Orthodox conversion about 30 years before, but I had no idea. I didn't even know what Judaism was before I reached Joburg. I knew that it was in the Bible, they were the Hebrews, the Jewish people, but that's the only, barely exposure that I'd had to Judaism. So I reached out, and I remember that I'd met them about 3 times, this Joburg family, and when they did come visit us in Cape Town, they couldn't eat what we ate. My mom would have to buy paper plates, and they would have chips and grapes and Coke out of polystyrene cups. And I just remember them having the most unique names, but that's all I knew. Anyways, after a phone call with them, my daughter and I were invited to a Friday night dinner. And soon into that evening, I realized that there was nothing normal about their Friday night dinners. They were singing in some ancient language, and then they washed their hands, and then they wouldn't talk, and then they did talk. And I remember there being so many long beards, long beards, even on these young men, and black hats and black coats. And it was like a total culture shock to me, something that I'd never experienced before. And it was loud and chaotic, and the men were singing and they were learning and laughing, and there was a ridiculous amount of food. I mean, soups and salads and dips, and they had this magic braided bread that I'd never tasted before. It was heaven. Meats and kugels and salads and salmon, etc. And it was like a Christmas lunch, but on a Friday night, and 10 times better. So I decided that I needed to get myself another invitation to one of these Friday night meals. The first friend that I made in Johannesburg was surprisingly Jewish. And I say surprisingly because we are in a country with about 60 million people and maybe 50,000 Jews throughout. So it's a pretty small community. And he wasn't observant at all, but it didn't matter to me. He was Jewish and he knew about Friday night dinners too. And I didn't realize at the time, but when my one and only big Jewish friend would introduce me to all of his friends, they would be Jewish too. So it was kind of like some exclusive bubble where Jews were friends with Jews, and Jews worked for Jews, and Jews had Jewish clients and Jewish doctors and dentists and lawyers, etc. So suddenly my Friday night options were opening up, and I was being exposed to a whole variety of different Jewish families and traditions and food and tunes, and of course, Torah. I developed this minor obsession that the more I participated in the Jewish Sabbath, the more I needed. And eventually one day a week of exposure to Judaism just wasn't cutting it. And my next step was to visit a shul. And I remember the first time going into a shul was the most daunting thing that I'd ever experienced. I didn't understand anything. I didn't know what book to hold. I didn't know why the books were backwards. I didn't know when I should stand or when I should sit or when I could talk. And it was, honestly, I was in zero rush to go back to shul. And then I remember telling somebody about this experience, and they said to me, well, you should try the Reform Synagogue in Sandton. And she said that the services would be in English and I could pretty much sit or stand whenever I chose. So I had no real idea about Reform versus conservative. Conservative. We don't have that here in South Africa. We've only got Reform and Orthodoxy. But I knew that I wanted more. So the Reform shul seemed to be like the right choice at the time for me. And I mainly knew what was going on, and everyone kind of seemed pretty relaxed and unfazed by my presence. So after a while of attending, I decided to set up a meeting with their rabbi and chat about the option of going through the conversion process. Long story short, my daughter and I began converting to progressive Judaism, and now my weekly dose of Judaism was up to twice a week, and my soul seemed to be getting the nutrition that it needed at the time. My daughter was due to start grade 1 a few months later, and I knew that I wanted her to attend a Jewish school. So I began Googling every school kind of in and around where I was living. And that was my first real experience of Reform Judaism not being accepted by the broader Jewish community. Obviously didn't understand why at the time. And I was left feeling confused and hurt because no one would even take my call. None of these schools would take my call. I put it down to maybe it's because they didn't accept converts, or perhaps it's because I'm a single mom, but I had no idea, like in my wildest dreams, that there was such a clear difference between progressive Judaism and Orthodoxy. But eventually I got hold of a school that was willing to accept my daughter, and it was a good school, King David. I'd heard brilliant reviews about it, and I was just over the moon that my daughter would be starting off her schooling career with a Jewish education. So as time went by, little red flags started coming up, and things weren't sitting so well with me, because the more I studied about Judaism, the more I realized that what I was learning about in shul wasn't quite adding up, but I couldn't quite place it. I thought maybe I was being a bit judgmental, but their rabbi didn't keep Shabbos, and no one in the shul was kosher, and women kind of wore yarmulkes, and there was just something wasn't gelling. But life was moving at a rapid pace, so I put my unsettling feelings on hold. Moving on, I realized that it was time to expand my friendship circle. So I decided to join something called the CSO, which stands for Community Security Organization, which is a Jewish nonprofit organization that teaches community members how to protect Jewish life and the Jewish way of life. We protect shuls, schools, events, rabbis, etc. So I mean, that in itself was daunting. I was joining a security organization and learning Krav Maga and security and how to protect against terrorists, etc. But I wanted to give back to the Jewish community as well as learn how to protect myself. God forbid something were to happen. Little did I know at the time that Hashem had kind of mapped out this entire path that I was going to be taking in order for me to meet my future husband. And there he was. I met my husband learning Krav Maga in the dojo at Biyachid. And I had, from the minute I saw him, the most instant crush on this man. But I had to play it cool, obviously. So for about a year, we got to know each other on a friendly basis. And I realized that Raphael and I were polar opposites, but we also had so much in common and came from such similar backgrounds. And actually, he had also gone through a progressive conversion prior to meeting me. And he also had this feeling in the pit of his stomach that something wasn't quite right. His dad is Jewish. His mom didn't Magai. And he's got a big history, Jewish history. I mean, his grandmother's a Holocaust survivor. So it was beautiful. She's passed away, unfortunately, but it's beautiful because his dad isn't religious, but kind of made its way full circle that now he's gone the Orthodox route. And I can just imagine what joy his grandmother must have to know that it's kind of come full circle. Anyways, we got to know each other, we became friends, and we realized that he wanted more and I wanted more, and we started dating. And soon after, we were engaged and married, and we were expecting our first. As soon as Hilon was born, literally within weeks after my son being born, we contacted the Beis Din to begin our Orthodox journey. And it took a good 6 months of back and forths and interviews and paperworks, and more paperwork and tests and prescribed writing materials and affidavits and handwriting analysis and background checks and reference letters, etc., to finally be accepted onto the conversion program. And one of the conditions of us joining the conversion program was that we had to live within 10 minutes walking distance to a shul. So we bought a home in Sheltondale, if any of you know Joburg, and we made the move, which made sense because it was closer to my daughter's school. It was closer to the CSO where we used to train weekly, as well as being one road away from the Sephardi shul, which is where we actually used to attend services. And at the time, I had no idea how this program, this conversion course, was going to flip our lives inside out, upside down, and we were literally almost shaken apart. We were in a fairly new marriage, in a new home, in a new area, in a new shul with a young baby and a preteen. And to top it off, it was, I think, month 2 of COVID. So it was not easy. The first 6 months of the conversion, however, were very cool. They were pretty easy. I mean, it was going at a steady pace, and I looked forward to, we had weekly sessions, and then kind of learned there was an extra Hebrew class that you could take on the side. There was multiple shears, but it was steady and easy. But then the honeymoon phase kind of started wearing off, where lockdown was lifted and shuls were reopened again, which meant my husband was never home because he would wake up and go straight to shul at 6 o'clock in the morning and go from shul to work, from work to shul, come home to eat quickly, and then he would go back to work. So I'm just looking at a question. So it just felt like my husband seemed to be out all the time. He was kind of making friends and learning Torah and listening to sikhs, doing Tanya classes and attending Verbrengings, and I was at home running a household, cooking, cleaning, working a full-time job, and it felt like I had no real Yiddishkeit growth. So I felt miles away from him and miles away from the journey that we were supposed to be on together. It was a very dark time in our lives as well as our marriage. So our friends from before the conversion, the Orthodox conversion course, they started fading. And then our family stopped inviting us out. We didn't get invitations to birthday parties or we call it a braai. I think in the US you call it a barbecue. We stopped getting invitations because we were now complicated. Our family and our situation was complicated. And COVID had us in and out of lockdowns, and it just felt like I couldn't keep my head above water. And my husband was progressing beautifully, and I felt like I was falling so far behind. To give you an idea, he was wearing tzitzis within a month into our conversion, and he started growing his beard, which he had never had in his life, and he wouldn't wear t-shirts anymore. He would only wear button-up shirts, and I think I saw him about 30 minutes every day, and he was kind of acting differently, but he also looked totally different, and we just seemed so out of sync. So my resentment started to build, and my unhappiness grew, because it was this journey that we were supposed to be on together, and he was way in front and I was way behind. That's what I thought, at least. Anyways, after a lot of digging deep and a bit of therapy, and working through things, I got myself into a way better headspace, and I was able to kind of confirm with myself that this conversion and Orthodox Judaism and this marriage and this life that we were trying to create was still exactly what I wanted. And yes, challenges come, in and out of your life, and thank God we dealt with it. And we've now been able to build this strong and unbreakable foundation for our marriage and for our growing family. So, I mean, I used to wonder often where Hashem was during all of the challenges that I faced. Where was he when I was 10 or when I was 14 or 15 and literally on the cusp of taking my own life? Why couldn't I feel him or his embrace or feel that he was there or around or existed or anything? And I think hindsight is such a funny thing, because only recently have I realized that Hashem was always there. I mean, in every moment of my life, he was right next to me, and he was kind of subconsciously guiding me through this plan that he already knew was going to work out pretty well. Like, Hashem always has a plan. And when it felt like God was hiding, I think it was because I wasn't ready yet to embrace him fully, and I needed to grow and figure out what I wanted and where I wanted to be and what values and morals and life path I wanted to choose, because only after that could I understand the real power of Hashem and what he was, and this higher power. So looking back, I can honestly easily name at least 10 incidents where I literally cheated death, and I obviously had an angel right next to me because God had bigger plans, and Baruch Hashem, that's why I'm here today with you all. So I know that our greatest lessons are learned from our own personal experiences, but based on my experience, I thought I'd just share a couple of things with you. I've seen the world in more ways than one, and I have lived on the other side of the grass, and I've eaten whatever I wanted to and worn whatever I chose, and I've filled my body with ink. I've had multiple boyfriends, I've been to the wrong parties, I've gotten involved with the wrong people, and lived a part of my life with no boundaries and no appreciation and certainly no godliness. And the point of me telling you this is because I can guarantee that it is totally not worth it. I mean, in my short but experienced life, I can tell you that instant gratification is just that. So you want to keep up with the Kardashians and have the latest design of things and go to the best parties and et cetera, et cetera. And I feel like instant gratification is all it will give you, which can be incredibly dangerous because it has the potential to become an addiction and elicit feelings of lust or something with no real meaning. And I've realized now that eating non-kosher food doesn't fill you up, but it actually leaves you empty. Wearing whatever you want and showing your entire body and skin to the world strips you of your dignity and certainly doesn't inspire grace. And of course, a world without Chassidus is an extremely dark place to be in. So lesson 1, please, if I could beg you right now, I would say, please do not take your Judaism for granted. My husband and I literally fought to be Jewish, to be acknowledged and to be accepted as part of your tribe. I know curly hair people want straight hair and straight hair people want curly hair, etc. But guys, like, you have received the biggest, most beautiful gift from Hashem, where he has placed a spark, a part of him within all of you. And I mean, just that alone blows my mind, totally blows my mind. And I can see it through the generosity and love and care and light of the Jewish community. It is not only incredible, but it is completely contagious. Lesson 2, My mother and I went through the most turbulent years and accumulated incredible resentment and disappointment and heartache and shame and embarrassment, etc. But every morning, and I kid you not, the first person that I call, whether it be 6 o'clock in the morning or 5:45 or on the school run, the first person that I speak to is my mom. And we've developed the most beautiful friendship, and we have learned how to forgive and how to love unconditionally. And if we can do it, I can promise you that you can do it too. And I think that if you ever needed a sign to reach out to a loved one or to a friend that you may have had a forever with, this is your sign, because the anger or hurt is not worth it, because life is so short. And then lesson 3, I once asked my rabbi why Jews always seem to gravitate towards one another. You could be a 33-year-old, non-observant Jewish female, and you see a 65-year-old man with a beard down to here in London airport, wearing his tzitzis and his yarmulke, and you just feel this like overwhelming need to say, hey, hi, I'm Jewish. I know I don't look Jewish, but I am. How are you doing? And my rabbi replied me, well, he said to me that the reason we gravitate towards one another is because of our Kedusha. And as a Jew, we carry such an incredible amount of holiness within ourselves. And our internal spark is able to connect to our other fellow Jews' internal sparks of Hashem. And that is why we are naturally drawn to one another, no matter our age, gender, status. We are all united. And I think it's so important that we keep that up and teach our children how important and what a privilege it is to be Jewish. We need to continue uniting in love and sharing our deep and beautiful heritage, which is obviously filled with richness, and continue standing proud as this Jewish nation. In my journey to Judaism, my heart and my soul has begun to heal, and my love tank has been filled, and I've been able to connect to our Creator through the most beautiful mitzvahs. Although sometimes very difficult, I mean, these mitzvahs can be incredibly hard. They've left me with purpose and with closeness rather than emptiness and loneliness. And I feel so blessed to have been able to find my community, which is Chassidim Shul. Any of you know it, in Orchards. And actually, while I'm on this topic, I know Chaya asked me yesterday what connected me to the Rebbe. And I really had to think about it. And what I was thinking was the first time.
Could I just interrupt you for 1 second?
Of course.
Okay, so one of the questions I asked you is like, are you part of the Chabad community? And you're like, I'm Lubavitch, like so proud. And I'm like, oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah,
because your story is so it's so not the norm, your story. And like you said, there's so few Jews in South Africa, and there's so many different types, like there's Reform and then there's also Orthodoxy. So I was just like blown away. So I'm very excited to hear your connection to the Rebbe, since it's so amazing and your whole journey is amazing. And the way you speak, it's so connected to Pesach, Dayenu, enough. You are so resilient, and you don't realize, you do realize, but you are so strong for making the choices that you did. You had people knocking you down, yet you said no. You felt in your heart what's right, and today you have a beautiful family, and it's beyond. I'm also gonna just ask real fast as well. We spoke before the class for a long time, and blown away by your story. And I got chills listening to everything you were saying, and tears in my eyes, because you've been through so much, but yet you came out on top, and you're so beautiful. And Hashem should continue blessing you and your family, and your husband, with just connection and shalom bayith, and just amazing things for you. You chose this life. It was chosen for you. You had a choice. I also want to ask you, was there anyone in your family history that was Jewish, that you know of, that you can let us know? That would be very interesting to hear, because it sounds like you felt at home right away in the Jewish tribe. So
I'll tell you firstly about the Rebbe. The first time I was exposed to Judaism was at my mom's first cousin's home. And I went for Shabbat. That's the family I was talking about. And right above the server in the dining room was this massive blown up picture of the Lubavitcher Rebbe. And I had no idea who this man was. He was just this very beautiful looking man, painting of a man, but he was kind of all over their home. And I didn't think much of it. And then I started going to, like I said, the first Orthodox shul that I started attending was the Sephardi shul. But of course, the rabbi was Chabad, as all, like so many of the rabbis are here. And we kind of decided to move on or to progress to another shul because there was a smaller congregation and we wanted a more family-orientated shul. And we went up the road we were kind of shul shopping, and we found a shul that really resonated beautifully, and it was everything we were looking for. And of course, it was Chabad of Norwood. And it is the most, it would be such a treat for you to ever meet the Roddles, Rabbi Roddle and his wife, Sarala. They are the most incredible, warm, just beautiful, beautiful people. And so they were Chabad. And it was a Chabad house, and I don't know if you know the differences. So we were in a Chabad house, which was they were like the Sarah and the Abraham, which opened their shul or their home to absolutely everyone and every Jew, no matter what part, walk of life they were from. And it was incredible. But when we became more religious, we were looking for a more religious or observant shul, and we decided to move down the road, which was, of course, Chabad, Chassidim shul. So I feel like I wasn't searching for the Rebbe, but he was like, I'm going to find you, I'm going to follow you, you are going to be, he was just everywhere. It was incredible. Everywhere I went, the Rebbe was there. So that's the number one. Number two, the connection, the family connection you asked. So my cousin converted 35 years ago, and she shares the same grandmother as my mom. So they've got same grandmother, so it's maternal line. And she was Sarah Haywood, and we are almost certain that she was a Jewish lady. We don't have any of her papers. She came in through Europe, into Oatswin. I'm not sure if you'll know that, but as an orphan from Europe. And she, on her deathbed, told my grandmother, my mom's mom, that she was Dutch, and she said that her dad, my grandmother's dad, was not her dad. It was actually another man. It was a Yudaman, a Jewish man. And that's all we knew because she passed away a couple of days later. But it's been the craziest thing because another aunt of mine, my mom's sister, actually converted Reform 2 weeks ago, but still obviously had a connection to Judaism, and she's on her own path, which is beautiful. But our family definitely has a very strong connection to Judaism. As much as my mom's a Christian, she hosts seders, and my dad makes challah, and there's definitely something, my stepdad makes challah. There's definitely something connecting us there. And it's, like I said, my husband also dad was Jewish. His grandmother was a Holocaust survivor, and our family we've definitely got major Jewish connections. So I would love to at some point find out. Be amazing to go down to town hall in Plet, which is, I don't know, about 14 hours away from here, but to get some kind of paperwork or to do, I know there's some tests you can do, I think, to see if you do have, not that it makes a difference because I've done the conversion, I am now Jewish, but it would be nice to know if my great grandmother was Jewish. It would kind of all click and make sense and be, yeah.
You told me that there's other family members as well that converted. Do you know how many cousins, family converted in your family?
I've got the one cousin that converted had 5 children. So all of my cousins are Jewish here in Johannesburg. And then one of my aunts nearly did. One other aunt has done it. Now to get my mom. So no, I'm kidding. We're not trying to.
So there's definitely something there. There's something in the heart. There's something in the air with your family history that I hope you'll find out very soon with the coming of Mashiach. And we're lucky to have you.
Thank you so much.
And we're lucky that you came home.
Thank you. No, it's been so incredible. What I wanted to say was that there's so many women that without you even knowing that me as a convert or someone going through the conversion process, I have looked up to so many women in terms of how they are, and this light that light that you can see shining from their souls, and this kindness and this generosity. And I've held them as my accountability partners without them even realizing. And this community has taught me to be unapologetic about my Judaism. And through it, I've kind of been shown this new life that I'm living in, that you can have fun and have meaning in what you're doing while bringing Hashem into your daily lives. And I think that's so important. So I think that if our community can continue to inspire one another and light each other's flames, we are going to be seeing Mashiach pretty soon. That we're learning right now. I'm here in Joburg, you're in America, and we are sharing together. It's mind-blowing. Really beautiful.
Wow. Your story is just wow. I hope you're going to write a book one day with all the details. I have a couple of questions, if that's okay. Okay, you may have mentioned this before, but okay, firstly, I just want to know the first time you went to the mikvah, what was your feeling of that particular mitzvah? Was it special? Was it overwhelming?
The first time that I went to the mikveh was to become Jewish. It wasn't family purity. And that was a very difficult, very overwhelming experience, because I went with my daughter and husband and one of my sons. The little one was too small, so they weren't ready to mikveh him yet, because the boys had to go through a hatat bris, so they had to have, even though they were circumcised, they still had to draw blood and then go into the mikveh. And they had to do that with my nearly 3-year-old son, and it was really hard because obviously he just got pricked and he was screaming, and then they kind of dunked him, and every time they dunked him it wasn't kosher because his hair was up or he was holding on to his dad or whatever, so he got dunked like 6 times before it was actually a kosher immersion. And I heard all of this going on before I was even allowed in, so it was I thought that I was going to come out and feel like this new neshama was inside of me, but I was so stressed out, and it was such an overwhelming period in our lives. But shortly after that, I went to the mikveh after being nida. And that was a whole different ballgame. That was one of the most beautiful experiences of my life. And pretty sure it was a beautiful mikveh. It was the most incredible mikveh too. But the mikveh lady said to me after I had toiveled, I guess you'd call it, gone down, she said, I've got 20 minutes that I can spend in, I can daven in there. And it was the most beautiful, like almost out of body experience. I just lay in the water and I prayed to Hashem, and it was just the most beautiful, beautiful time. And since then I haven't gone back because we fell pregnant pretty soon after that. I think that's what mikveh may set you up for. But yeah, we are now expecting, which is also a crazy story, because this baby is going to be our first baby, because our other kids are converts. So they are Ben Abraham or Bas Sarah. So this little one will be one of our only child. Or
Wow.
born during.
That is so beautiful, especially your experience and your rawness of sharing, the good, the bad, the ugly, everything about your story. But at the end of the day, if we don't go through pain, sometimes we don't get the gain. And
Exactly.
It's incredible. And mazel tov to you. We should hear good news very soon. And for all those who are waiting for blessings. I wanted to ask you another question, actually ask you something to clarify again. But there are many people that, unfortunately, right now we live in the times of galus. It's not, hopefully Mashiach will come and there will be no more pain or suffering. But I don't think anyone has it easy. Everyone has something in their life that they're yearning or they need or they want. Everyone has a story. Everyone has something. Some it's an easier path. Some it's harder. Some has more difficult journeys. But everyone has a journey. And my question to you is, for someone that went through a hard journey in their life and today they feel that they're suffering from PTSD and trauma, and it's hard for them to wake up in the morning and it's hard for them to move on, what would you, from someone that went through so much, what would you be your recommendation to someone who, I have people in mind that speak to me a lot, and I want to give them the right words of encouragement to be able to wake up and be okay and see the sun shining and know that you can have pain but also have gain. What would your words of wisdom be?
I think that the first thing is not to be quiet about depression or anxiety or PTSD. I think so often, like we said yesterday, it's a taboo subject and people kind of keep it to themselves. And my advice would be, don't be like me and only deal with things 11 years later, 15 years later. When you're going through it, you need to tap into your brain and verbalize things and vocalize things and deal with them now, because they are going to manifest and become worse as time goes on, as long as you are suppressing them. So I think talk out, speak to people. People love to help. People love to hear. Your friends are there. You don't need to feel ashamed. You can call me. You can get Chaya's number. We can speak. I'm so happy to speak to you. If you don't get my number on WhatsApp, you can find me on Instagram or Facebook or whatever. I would feel privileged to speak to anybody going through any trauma or pain. I think that's the first step to healing, is to vocalize and say it out loud, like to really own it, to own what you're going through, say it so that you can deal with the pain and move on.
Wow, thank you for that. And there's hope, everyone. There really is hope. And this is our work now to bring Mashiach, is to fix ourselves, to fix our traumas, to fix our sadness or our stories, and to make the world a better place and to be happy inside. Because at the end of the day, I believe that we deserve Mashiach. We are such a beautiful nation. If someone needs help, we're running. If we hear tragedy, we're all there. We hear good things, we're always celebrating people's stuff. But at the end of the day, like, something's not enough. And the Lubavitcher Rebbe was once in a private, like when he was giving out dollars, someone came to him and she said, "When are you going to bring Mashiach?" And the Rebbe said to her, "I did everything I can to bring Mashiach. Now it's up to you and you and you and you." And what does that mean? And that's your story. And you are bringing Mashiach. There's no question, Batsheva. Like, your story, your journey, you are going to inspire thousands today with your story. That's going to, we'll share soon. But it's just, that's what resonates with me about bringing Mashiach. We need to tap into our gifts. We need to tap into our pain, and we need to fix it. We need to see, what can we do in our lives to be the light. We need to be the light in our homes, in our lives. And, you know, Hashem wants us to serve him with joy. Mitzvahs are not meant to be done miserably. We should do it happily. And if we do it miserably, I learned in Tanya, it's not accepted as much. Joy is when God really reveals himself through simcha and joy. And it's hard. It's not easy work to be joyful when you're going through pain. However, just know that Hashem is with you all, and he's carrying you through it. Like Batsheva said in her story, if she didn't go through all the things she went through, she wouldn't have met her husband, and she wouldn't have seen him in that synagogue. And, you know, it just shows that everything in life is hashgacha pratis, which is divine providence. It happens for a reason. There's no coincidences. So with that said, your story is meant for you, and it's what you do with your story. So you can sulk in pain your whole life, or you can find the gain in your story. Does that make sense?
I love that. And that's kind of giving me the courage to share it. Since speaking, I've had so many women, which has been absolutely incredible, reach out and say they've got this issue, or they're dealing with connection to Hashem, or how can I help? And I think I was so nervous and so traumatized almost to share my story, but after that, it kind of made it all worth it. Just helping one person makes it all worth it. And there's been multiple, like, I'm sure, I mean, you're the most incredible woman, inspiring people every single week. I'm sure you've seen such gain amongst your ladies group that are following you, and what people are, how they are changing and how they are growing. I mean, it's so rewarding. It's beautiful.
It really is rewarding, but the people that are wonderful are the ones that share. And this just fell into my lap, and I just went with it. Week after week after week after week, making people crazy to talk. But what's so beautiful is that you witnessed that. That's why you're laughing. What's so beautiful is that I'm hearing beautiful stories. I'm hearing that people are getting inspiring and connecting more to their roots. I'm hearing that people that never met the Rebbe want to go to his resting place. People are telling me crazy stories how they feel Hashem in their life and they're seeing the light. And it's so nice it's so special. The Rebbe always said that when come to me, whenever you need anything, write to me, write your pain. But he also said, also come and tell me the good news. Tell me the good revealed news, because he's working so hard for us. They say that a tzaddik never dies, their soul never dies. And they say that when one passes away, they're able to do more for us on a spiritual level. They're not limited. They're not limited in a body. So I want to take this opportunity to thank the Rebbe for being there for you. I want to thank the Rebbe for being there for me. And I want to thank, it's incredible, the work that is being done around the world, and we're all getting connected, and it's amazing. The fact that we reached South Africa, and today we have Zoom. Back in the day, to make a phone call, you had to wait in a long line. And sometimes if they didn't pick up, you didn't get through. And before phone calls, it was letters. And today, a click of a button, we have everything at our fingertips. So we're so close to the times of Mashiach, and it's really here. And when he comes, here's my question that I'm going to leave off with you. Are you going to be the ones that are going to be waiting to find out all the beauty that you never did, like you never tapped into? Or are you going to be the leaders that are going to teach and be there for the people that need more insight? Now, if you don't know an Aleph, if you know an Aleph, teach an Aleph. But if you don't know an Aleph, it's not your fault, but you can learn an Aleph. It's out there. The Torah is for all of us. It doesn't matter where you come from. It doesn't matter what walk of life. And let's all make the world a better place and be the light in other people's lives and be the reason why someone smiles today, because it makes such a difference. Imagine, Batsheva, no one reached out to you, you wouldn't be where you are today. And all these wonderful angels that you call them were sent by the Lubavitcher Rebbe to be there for people like you, for people like everyone that needs some inspiration in their life. And today you're paying it forward, and you're inspiring so many. And you're so gracious that I asked you if it's okay if anyone has a story and they want to talk it out with you, because you're safe and you've been through so much. You definitely watered down your story so much as well. And it's incredible how you're sitting there with lipstick on your face and beautiful, and you forgave, like you actually forgave someone that hurt you the most. And and now you have the most beautiful relationship with her, and she sounds lovely, and it's not her fault. She didn't know better, but now she does know better. And I'm sure she's going to watch this. I'm sure you have so much nachas from your beautiful, beautiful daughter, Batsheva, who is literally a beacon of light. And Hashem should bless you all with long life and healthy years, and literally all the blessings that one can have in an over-the-top way, spiritual, material. You shouldn't have to worry about anything. You should just be able to be there for those that need. And through your story and your journey, you will be able to make an even bigger difference than you already had. So I want to take this opportunity for thanking you for being vulnerable and coming onto this platform of spreading light and love. And I want to tell you something. People are like, it's amazing that you do this class every single week. The person that inspires me the most to do this class is the Lubavitcher Rebbe. And I feel very honored that I had the opportunity to meet him as a little girl. And I feel that he gave me energy in my life to do this. And yeah, it's really an honor, and we can all do this together. So if you'd like to be part of this amazing journey of spreading light and spreading this story and spreading others, please reach out to me how you can become an ambassador. An ambassador, what is an ambassador is someone that just shares, and it's so easy. It's a click of a button. Share it with your chats, share it with your communities, and let's bring the world to a better place. Also, if anyone has a special story that they would like to reach out to me, we'd love to hear it, and we hope to host you one day very soon. And may we all merit to see the coming of Mashiach now.
Amen. And Chag Sameach to you all. Sure.
Yes.
Thank you.
And thank you so much, Batsheva.
Alrighty. Goodbye. Cheers. Keep well. God bless.
Have a blessed day.